Hi, this is Khalil Guliwala. Welcome to another episode of BIPOC Manager Podcast. In today's episode, I'm super excited to have Shane Ray Martin with us. Shane is a founder of Mediation Table, which is an AI-driven technology cutting the time it takes to solve conflicts, transforming months of uncertainty into minutes of clarity. If that wasn't enough, he is the podcast host of Deal Talk, which is a negotiation focused podcast, and which has about 15,000 listeners in 30 countries. He's a Harvard trained negotiator. He is currently pursuing his MBA at the American University Kogod School of Business. Shane, please.
Yeah, Khalil, it's great to be on your show and just returning the favor. You came on mine, so it's an honor to be with you. And I hope that I have a good feeling this episode is really going to help people.
Yeah, I think so as well, Shane, because I think one of the reasons why I have you here is just, generally you heard the word negotiation, I think people kind of like back away and they get uncomfortable. And I think just what you're doing, producing quality content, talking about, I think it just levels everybody up.
Yeah, it really does. And one thing that I want people to know is that my skills as a negotiator are really just accumulation of all kinds of wonderful people and skilled negotiators pouring into me, teaching me, coaching me, but also having the willingness to try and experiment and take imperfect action, even when it feels uncomfortable, to ask a question for a raise or to ask a question to solve a conflict in your family. Like, really, it comes down to your quality of questions can determine your quality of your life. And that's why I love negotiation. So I'm much more passionate about people than I am negotiation. But negotiation is the route. Negotiation is how we build relationships, build trust, improve our lives. So that's what negotiation means to me.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like in some sense, in negotiation is more the means to, but really it's about connecting with another human being. And it sounds like you do it through questions. Like, can you talk a bit more? Because I know you produce amazing content of, these chat GPT prompts about kind of questions you should be asking. Can you share a little bit more of the process you go through, kind of, how you think about the question to ask somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not perfect, but I have figured out that asking a question that starts with how or asking a question that starts with what leads you on a really good path because it's open ended and it allows the other person who you're asking the question to really share information if it's open ended. So if you start a question with how or what, that can be really powerful. And if you're negotiating, you know that having information is crucial. Having information is power, especially in our world today where data is more important than ever before. Like, collecting information is like should be one of your main goals in a negotiation. So I love to ask questions that start with how or what, even if it's simple. Like, what about this gives you the greatest concern? Or how do you feel about moving forward on January 22nd with this agreement? Or what might be reasons that this agreement doesn't work out? Like, these are just things that come, to the top of my mind, but there are so many questions that you ask and the context in which you're negotiating in, living in, breathing in always matters when you're deciding what question to pick.
Yeah, I gotta say one thing I'm curious about is the fact you talk about what and how, but not the why. Can you talk a bit more? So why? I'm guessing there's something with a why question that doesn't help. Can you talk about that? Like why not have a why question?
Yeah, why not why, huh? It's preference. There's why can come off as interrogative. It can come off as defensive. And so how or what is a bit softer. There's uh, one of my favorite negotiators in the whole world is a gentleman who actually passed away, his name is Sergio De Mello. There's a great documentary about his life on Amazon. And Sergio De Mello was really high up at the United Nations. I think he was like second from the top. And he actually died in Iraq in 2002 or 2001 because of a bombing. But anyways, he lived this amazing life, lived all over the world, helped end wars. Really like was a Renaissance man. Really like living with the people, understanding their needs, asking questions. And he says this quote in one of his interviews where he says that his goal in a negotiation is to be a great massager of egos. And he said that he said that massaging egos is what a great negotiator does. It makes the other person feel warm by asking questions, by being inviting, by being kind. These are things that Sergio, like I found in reading about him and learning about his life, he really embodied. And I love that he talked about massaging an ego. So asking a why question, it doesn't seem like conducive to massaging someone's ego or being kind and polite. Although, of course, there are why questions that you can create that do that, but you have to, again, find what works for you. And the only way you can do that is by testing, trying out different things, experimenting.
Yeah. No, it sounds like, I think for the story, but I think what I sense I get is that you start with almost the attitude you have towards the other person. And it has to be one where you're inviting, you're warm, you're connecting. And the word choices become, you said, a matter of experimenting, finding what's comfortable to you, what comes out in the context, and depending on, again, massaging the ego of the person in front of you.
Yeah, it's true. Words give life or they create death. Like words are so powerful. And I feel like one of the biggest mistakes that people make going into a negotiation is they actually are negotiating against themselves. And like what that sounds like is, I don't know if I can do that. Or I don't think that they'll accept that. So we are negotiating against ourselves when we haven't even taken the time yet to ask how or what questions. And that's a big, big mistake. So put yourself in a good state of mind and be open to opportunities, be open to possibilities, because you never know what can happen. Things change so fast in negotiations.
Yeah. I think what I'm kind of getting from you as well is that I think a lot of time maybe people who are maybe a bit more reluctant to negotiate, they may have a script and they kind of stick to the script. But I'm hearing from you is an element where you've actually got to be open. You've got to kind of be listening and connecting with the person. Can you talk about maybe how you balance those two sides? I imagine all the research you put in, and then it's like the thing with like Mike Tyson, everybody has a strategy until they get punched in the face. So how do you balance that sort of prep work while kind of having this live negotiation in front of somebody?
Well, I'd love to never be punched by Mike Tyson in the face. That would be brutal. That would end so terribly for him, you know? Um, but how do you balance it? You know, Khalil, I'm not actually sure that you do.
Yeah.
I think that striking a perfect balance of using a script versus being you is constantly in flux. It's like constantly changing. So I think it's just key to not necessarily be married to a script because then you feel robotic. You come off as like Chat GPT in a conversation, and that's not conducive to building trust. That's not conducive to creating value and capturing value is what we talk about a lot in negotiations. And so, because if you create value and then you don't capture it, then the other person's winning everything and you're losing everything. That's not the point of negotiation. The point of a negotiation is to expand the pie and then share it together, but also make sure that you win as you personally, the negotiator. And so, I would say that a balance doesn't necessarily exist. What you have to figure out to do is, again, practice this, but you have to figure out um, that there are certain moments when you just need to be human, and there are certain moments when you should look at your list of questions that you've prepared. And so, in that, you'll find you'll come to know who you are as a negotiator as you do both.
Yeah. It's the last thing you said actually, Shane, the fact that, it's in a negotiation, you kind of discover who you are, right? Because I imagine you go in negotiation, you're coming not just with the question of prep work, but your values, your personality, and everything else in there. Can we talk a bit about that? So, so maybe have someone's maybe background, personality can shape kind of how they show up in the negotiations.
Yeah, you know, how someone's background, and I love that you talked about discover who you are. Man, it's so good. You know, I've discovered who I am when I put myself in uncomfortable situations. And negotiation is one arena, but the arena where I really feel like I've discovered who I am is one, by asking myself questions, and then two, by putting myself in a vulnerable state, doing something I've never done before. The thing that comes to my mind is 2 years ago, I'd never been a runner. Never like was a runner. I played sports, but I dreaded running. And 2 years ago, I got this crazy idea to run an ultra marathon, which is 100 miles in one like swoop, in one swing without stopping. And so I ran 10 miles, then I ran 20 miles, I ran 30 miles, and then finally I was trained and ready. And I did the race. But at mile like 68.8, my body collapsed and I hit like the ground, the trail in Texas, and I quit. And it was devastating. But 4 months later, there was another race. I recovered from my injury and I had a new support team. Rachel, my girlfriend, my sister flew in from the other side of the country, and we did the whole race, all 100 miles together. They helped me without stopping, nonstop, 30 hours. I finished 8 minutes before the cutoff. And there were even runners halfway through the race that were telling me I wouldn't make the time cutoff, but I kept pushing, I kept driving. I had a strong why of why I was out there, why I was sweating, bleeding, hurting. It was the most painful thing. But in the midst of those hardest, darkest moments, my reliance on others, my reliance for me personally on my faith in God propelled me to get across the finish line like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And the craziest thing is that my last mile, mile 100, was my fastest mile of the entire race because I was so fueled by the support of others, by this drive to push the limits of what's possible and to ultimately chase who I could possibly be. And I feel like a negotiator can do the same thing. Isn't that the reason why you negotiate, is to see what's possible and to do the impossible if you're ever given the opportunity? I mean, that's what it's all about. So negotiating is just if I could say anything to the listeners, like treat it kind of like a playground, like try out the monkey bars, go on the swings, maybe go down backwards down the slide, like try it out, see what works. I don't know what you like to do on the playground, but experiment and see, what questions work, what doesn't work. What preparation routine works really well for you, what doesn't work well for you. And over time you'll begin to refine it like a diamond being cut. Like you'll get tighter and stronger and you'll get more fine-tuned. And the end product is something that I think you would never expect yourself to be able to accomplish. And that's what negotiation can do for you.
Yeah. I mean, I see the parallel between you talking about like running, like you said, you hadn't run before, but you build muscle memory. You train, you train, something happens, you kind of get back up on the horse, you train again, you go for it, you have supports around you. And I can't help but see the parallel between that and negotiating. It's about a muscle memory. You build in the vocal patterns, speech patterns, the body language, just the mentality to be able to do this.
Yeah, 100%. There's this misconception that negotiators have to be the loudest, the biggest, the most proud in the room. But I would argue that the most elite negotiators are the ones who are asking the most questions, listening the most, and probably are the most silent.
Okay. Wow. Shane, I think that, what I'm kind of getting from what I love about it is like, if I kind of put all these different elements together, I think it's that, you've got to kind of put yourself in uncomfortable positions to be able to grow. But you can't just be doing it for yourself. You got people around you who are supporting you and you're supporting them in return. And I think, and the other element as well, I think is the fact that you said that, that sometimes you're kind of negotiating with yourself and you're putting limits on yourself. So it seems like one is like, like get out of your own way, take that first step and build up supporters and cheerleaders around you who are going to get you to the finish line.
Yeah, for sure. Step one is like create your big audacious goal, create your dream. And the more that you think about it, sit with it, pray about it, and speak it out, the right people are going to come into your life and support you. And then the best part is that the wrong people will be repelled and they won't. And that's the beauty of having a dream, or that's the beauty of trying to chase down the impossible. And that's why I started the mediation table too, is because our mission is ultimately to just we exist to end conflicts in our local communities, and we're going to do that. But our real mission and goal is to help end wars. And so our goal, whether it happens or not, isn't as relevant as having a goal and doing the journey. Because imagine accomplishing all your dreams and then looking around and like having no one to share it with. How debilitating and sad would that be? So you've got to have fun people who are encouraging, inspiring, and also people who will maybe not call you out, but call you up when you need it. And that's the beauty of setting a goal, pursuing it, and being relentless.
Yeah. Shane, something you mentioned a couple of times, you mentioned how like faith kind of moved you when you're preparing for the marathon. You talk about prayer. Can you talk maybe of how maybe have your faith has influenced you as a negotiator, or when you're negotiating or talking to other people?
Yeah, for sure. So practically, what that means in a negotiation is if I'm having a conversation, there will be times when I ask for wisdom or I pray for even the other person who I'm talking to. And sometimes through that like prayer, I get an answer, or sometimes I don't. But my faith, I've got two best friends, Jose and Tyler. And for the last 4 years, we've met on Zoom nearly every morning during the week for 5 to 10 minutes sometimes to just pray, to just be with each other, to set intentions, just very normal, like nothing crazy. There's no like heavens opening and sunshine, although that would be great right now. It's just like fellowship. It's coming together with people like you mentioned, Khalil, and it's um, putting your trust in the creator of the universe is how I see it. And it just gives me a lot of hope, and it drives me to want to serve others. So that's where a lot of my values derive from. But it starts just by first surrendering, knowing that like you're not capable of doing it alone. You need help. And that's where like my source and desire for prayer comes from, is like, man, I've been in some really tough situations, especially volunteering at the National Suicide Hotline, where I didn't know what else to do except pray for the person. And also like for my own sanity of like, everything's going to be okay. Right. And to not take it so serious as well, to just be who you are, but also uh, to just surrender. So that's a little bit of my thoughts on prayer.
Thank you for that, Shane. I think that's it. Like you can show up the best you can, but you have to surrender at a certain point. Like you've got to deal with things as they are. Shane, before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to mention or discuss?
Yeah. Well, first, the opportunity to share and the opportunity to be with you is always, always so awesome. So thank you for the opportunity. And to those who are listening, I would just encourage you to be kind to yourself. Like we talked today about words that we're speaking to others in the form of questions, but what questions and things are you saying about yourself in your own head? Make sure today, especially, that they are kind words, they're healthy words, and they're words of life.
Thank you so much for that, Shane. If anyone wants to follow you or learn more about you, what's the best way they could do that?
Yeah. So 3 ways. One, ShaneRayMartin.com. Two, on LinkedIn, if you just search Shane Ray Martin. And then three, you can email me, Shane@ShaneRayMartin.com. I answer all my emails and help lots of folks who are in a negotiation. Some are very high stakes and some are quote unquote low stakes, but every negotiation matters. And so if there's anything I can do to bless you, if you're stuck maybe in a tricky situation, just reach out and I'll see what I can do to help you.
Thank you so much for being a guest today, Shane.
It's an honor.